All right, if I were starting from scratch today, this is exactly what I would do. What is going on? It's Jared with Self Mastery for Men, and welcome to the live video. So if you're joining us here live, comment live. Love to see who's here with us today. If you're joining us on the replay, comment replay, and that way I can reach out to you later, see what you got from this. I really hope you guys get a lot out of it. So the first step in the journey to self mastery, without a doubt, is a change in your self concept. And a change in your self concept, meaning a change in your identity. People spend a lot of time focusing on their beliefs. I got to change my beliefs, especially men. We also spend a lot of time focusing on what we have to change. We have to change our habits. We have to work harder because we're logical. We like to fix things. We bang our head against the wall. We're going to make it happen. But the problem is the strongest held belief about yourself is your identity. So people think your identity just it is, it's true. But if you think about it, your identity is really just a strongly held belief that you've been holding since you were a child. And sometimes you didn't even choose it consciously. So a lot of times the reason why you have a hard time getting the things that you want to get is because you might be doing all the right tactics. You might even be trying to shift your beliefs or shift your values, but you don't believe you're the person that can make it happen. So your self-concept, your self-identity is everything. I found that out the hard way. It took me years and years and years to find that out. But I want to introduce you to today, especially, and this is, I was really excited to do this with you today because I'm reading this book here for the first time. It's called Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. And I'll be honest with you, I've heard about it for years and I've been putting it off for years because, first of all, the title seemed super complicated, right? Psycho-Cybernetics. I thought it was going to be really technical and really of a, a really dense read, but it's not at all. And then the second reason is because I had the first print edition on my shelf and it was there for years. And in the first print edition, they didn't put any line breaks and they had like zero spacing. So you ever have a big wall of text on like a Facebook message or like on like email, you don't read it, right? So I'm like, I'm not reading this wall of text. Anyway, I got the updated version. They did line spacing and they did better formatting. And it's a really simple, easy read. But the main concept of this is you can't outperform your self-concept. That's the main concept right there. You can't outperform your self-concept. So it's like that old saying, whether you think you can, you think you can't, you're right. But it's not just belief, it's your identity. So I want to give you, and I'm going to get much deeper in this in a moment, but I want to give you some background information on me, like some behind the scenes notes. Maybe you're like this too. If somebody says something out there that you respect, you tend to believe it. Like, okay, that guy has authority. He's been there. He has experience. He must know what he's talking about. Seems to work for him, right? But if you come up with something, do you always believe it? Or you're like, hey, I think that's pretty smart, but I need some confirmation to see if that's true or not. I don't really know if I fully trust myself or not. Well, here's the interesting thing. I'm that way too. If I hear it somewhere else, sometimes like, wow, that's legit. But if I come up with it, it takes me a little while to really let it sink in and ground and be like, that's a great idea. That's the same concept here. I I had started to think this years ago. And as a matter of fact, I changed my life entirely through this concept of self-identity, changing your identity. You wouldn't have recognized me 5 years ago. I'll tell you the brief 30,000 foot Cliff Notes version of it. But I had a six-figure business. I was doing really well. On paper, I had everything that you would think that you would want. I was married. I had a cool place to live. I lost all of it in a very short amount of time. My ex-wife had tons of addiction issues, and I don't have to tell you, it does a toll on the person. It does a toll on the person taking care of them. It was brutal. It's like when it rains, it pours. My wife is battling this alcohol addiction, and then my biggest client in my business goes out of business, stops paying me, and leaves me in crippling debt. Like if I was having a six-figure business before, now I owed just as much as I used to make in a year. It was brutal. So now my marriage is falling apart. I'm in massive debt, and I'm trying to get out of it. Now I'm stress eating like crazy. I end up being 80 pounds overweight. I'm in the legitimate obese category at this point. And then I get divorced. So now I'm starting over at age 30. I'm basically bankrupt. I didn't file, but I was that far in debt. My marriage is gone. I have no place to stay anymore. I'm staying in my parents' condo. They didn't live there. I lived alone there, but they had like a summer condo. Stayed there. Here's the worst part about it. It's an over 65 community. So if they knew I was there, I was 30, they'd evict my parents. So I had to live in the dark. for months. It was ridiculous. So I'm overweight, I'm divorced, I'm on my own, I have to live in the dark, and I'm massively in debt. I'm starting over at age 30. And understatement of the year, that is not where I expected my life to be at 30 years old. And the worst part about it is number one is I had success previously, or what you would think of would be success on paper. And number two is I knew better. I knew all the skills. I knew all the, I had read all the books. I had been into person development. I could quote all these different people, like these famous person development people, like they were my own sayings, right? But I didn't own it and I didn't have any type of physical mastery. I wasn't embodying it. And what turned it all around for me, I finally got super fed up. What turned it all around for me was this idea of changing your self-concept. Because what I realized is I was saying things like, man, I'm a failure. I'm washed up. I'm no good. I'm fat. I'm lazy. I was really beating myself up. But it what I had here's what happened. I had turned the circumstances, like the circumstances of my life. It wasn't I'm going through a hard time. It was I'm cursed. I'm a bad person. I'm a failure. I'm a loser. I don't have what it takes. So I took the circumstances of my life and they weren't just circumstances anymore. They became my identity. Does that make sense? I was owning into my misfortune as if it was my identity. And whenever you make something your identity, it's real, isn't it? Like what has more weight to you? Is it I'm trying to eat healthy or I'm a bodybuilder? What has more weight to it? Or I try to watch what I eat versus I am a vegetarian. I'm not saying that I am a vegetarian, but like if you put it as your identity, it tends to stick way more. If you say, hey, I'm trying to quit smoking versus I am a non-smoker, the identity becomes so much more real, doesn't it? So what I did to change every single aspect of my life very quickly was a change in my identity. And I did it first of all by the words that I used. I started saying, hey, I am a healthy person. I am a bodybuilder. I am a success, this type of stuff. But it was more so than that. I went deep into the unconscious and I changed what was actually holding me back in the first place. Now, what I want to share with you is an excerpt from this book that kind of talks about what we're talking about here today. And I'm not going to go too deep into it, but I just want to share it with you because I think it's going to be valuable. So in this book is chapter one, it's page two. Okay. The most important psychological discovery of the century is the discovery of the self-image. Whether we realize it or not, each of us carries with us a mental blueprint or picture of ourselves. It might be vague. In fact, it might not even be consciously recognizable at all, but there it is, complete down to the last detail. This self-image is our own conception of the sort of person that I am. It's been built up from our own beliefs about ourselves. But most of these beliefs about ourselves have unconsciously been formed from our past experiences, our past successes or failures, our humiliations, our triumphs, and the way other people have reacted to us, especially in early childhood. From all of these things, we mentally construct a self or a picture of who we are. And once that idea or belief about ourselves goes into the picture, it becomes true as far as we are personally concerned. We don't question its validity, but proceed to act upon it as if it's true. Does that make sense? And so that's what I discovered. And so it wasn't just a matter of me saying, hey, I'm going to say these words, I am this, I am that, I am all these different things, because that's true. But I'm sure you've experienced fake it till you make it, right? You try to act more confident, but it doesn't really seem real. Well, that's what was happening with me. What I realized is I go, oh my God, my identity is tied to all of my unconscious beliefs, reference experiences, what happened to me, my successes, my failures. I started to realize that who I thought I was wasn't consciously chosen. It was just a grab bag of all these different things I picked up from my parents, my school teachers. It was like you ever go like to a potluck and all your relatives bring random things of food? It's like I was this big giant potluck of a person, and none of it would have been chosen if I had consciously decided. I don't know if that makes any sense to you. But so he gives two tips to get out of it. So he gives like two steps to this. So I'll share with you real quick. He goes, number one, the self-image becomes a golden key to living a better life because of two important discoveries. Number one is all of your actions, feelings, behaviors, and even your abilities must always remain consistent with your self-image. So in short, you always act like the person that you believe yourself to be. Not only this, but you literally cannot achieve or act otherwise in spite of all your conscious efforts or willpower. The man who convinces himself to be a failure will find some type of way to fail in spite of all of his good intentions and willpower, even if opportunity is literally dumped in his lap. The person who conceives of himself to be a victim of injustice, who's meant to suffer, will always find circumstances to verify this experience. The self-image is a premise, a base, or a foundation upon which your entire personality, your behavior, and even your circumstances are built. Does that make sense? So what this is saying is what I told you in the beginning of the video. You cannot outperform your self-concept. No matter what you do, you try to change your beliefs don't trump your self-concepts. You try to change your habits, you do it for a little while, your habits crash because it's not consistent with your identity. You change locations, right? Like the relationship's not working. I got to break up, get divorced, find a new relationship. My job's not, I got to get a new job. You change situations, you end up in the same circumstance again because you're still there. It's still your identity. Does that make sense? So here's what I mean by I came up with something. This is what I used to turn my life around. But I'm like, well, I think this is a pretty good concept. But now I'm reading this. I'm like, damn, there is weight behind this. So I'm going to give you real quick. I wanted to share with you what I discovered is actually going on here. I think it's really valuable to share. This is a sneak peek, by the way. So I have a coaching group. I'm working with a group of men right now. We're doing weekly mentorship, weekly group coaching, and there's video lessons that go along with it, and we do coaching through it. But so here's how I help these guys change their self-concept. To me, this is called the 7 levels of self-mastery. And to me, this is your absolute path to total transformation. When I came up with this, I reverse engineered how I turned my life around. And I'm looking at it and I go, this is the most complete system I've ever seen on how to make a transformation, because it literally shows you how to be in alignment, where you're out of alignment, where the challenges are. It's amazing. And you see what I mean here in a minute. But so here's the 7 levels. Picture you're a person and you have all of these components in you, and it goes in this order. And the ones higher have more influence over the ones on the bottom. Stick with me here for a second. But so number one is you have your purpose, which is your true north, which is what you're after, which is your outcome or your goal. We don't always get it, right? Because sometimes we don't believe we're the type of person that can achieve the purpose. But so purpose is number one. If you have a strong enough purpose, by the way, you'll find a way to become that person. So number one is having a really strong purpose. By the way, when you're a man, or they talk about masculinity or masculine self-development, what do they always say? A man's got to be on his purpose, doesn't he? So purpose is number one. Number two, though, is your identity. And this is who you believe you are. This is your strongest held belief about yourself. So what you say, I am this or I am that, it becomes true. The key is you got to become the person that achieves the purpose. Does that make sense? So if you have this purpose, but your identity doesn't match, you're not going to hit it. Do you follow me so far? The number three is your mindset and your worldview. So that's your beliefs, that's your values, that's sometimes even your deepest level of programming in your unconscious, which I'll save that for another time. But the number four is your predominant energy and emotions. That would be what emotions you feel on a regular basis. That would be your physical energy. So, for example, like if you have, and this is my girlfriend has significant food allergies. She didn't know it for years. So she's always sick. It's affecting her mood. By the way, gluten can make you depressed and not know it. I know this one firsthand. So, predominant energy and emotions, this is your state, how you show up day to day. And your state means your emotions, your energy, your physical energy, like your vibe, right? Like how you're showing up, but it could also mean your masculine energy, feminine energy, right? Does that make sense? Like it could be your polarity energy as well. Number five is all your knowledge, skills, resources, what you have access to, or in other words, your resourcefulness. If you have access to all of these things, but you don't believe you're resourceful, does it matter? No. But so number five is your actual knowledge, skills, and resources. Do I have access to time? How do I, spend my time? Do I have access to resources like money? How do I work with that? And then number six is your habits, actions, and behaviors. And number seven is your environment and your conditioning. Now, let me show you how this works. Most people live their life this way. They let their environment and their conditioning, meaning all their past experience, remember we read it here in this book, they let all of their past experiences determine what they do. And because they're letting their past experiences and their behaviors, which is all based on conditioning, all the knowledge, all the skills, all the resources, that's being colored by who they think they are based on their conditioning. Or their environment is controlling like their schooling or what they have access to or how they feel about money or how they use their time. Does that make sense? And then their environment and conditioning and their habits and like all of this stuff controls how they feel because maybe they have trapped emotions or they have like insecurities or something like that. Or, they're being affected energetically by the past. And then all of this stuff is coloring their worldview. They're believing what they believed in the past. They're believing what somebody told them. Their beliefs and values are just based on something that they got in from somewhere else. And then their identity ends up being a grab bag of all of this, which makes them it's very difficult to achieve a purpose if you even have one, because you're like, well, I'm not the type of person that can do that, or nobody else in my family did. I don't believe I can. And so all of this baggage comes with you and it gets very hard for you to achieve your purpose. Does that make sense? And then so people get stuck in this loop and share with me if you've ever experienced this. You want to make a change. You want to become greater than your conditioning. So you go, you know what? I got to do more stuff. I got to set a New Year's resolution is a huge one. Or I got to, set a new routine, or I got to, today's the day. Have you ever been like, today's the day I'm going to make a change, and you fire up and then it lasts for a week and then you burn out and then you get off the wagon? I'm speaking to myself when I say that. Like I've done that too. And then you go, okay, all of these habits aren't working. It's because I don't have enough resources. I don't have the right knowledge. I don't have the right skills. So you buy a $10,000 coaching program to show you how to do this thing, speaking to myself again, right? And it still doesn't work. And you go, well, that's because I'm not doing enough. And then so you do more, you double down, you buy another course, and you just do this cycle over and over and over again. Nothing's working. You go, that's it. I got to change my business. I got to change jobs. I got to change my relationship. My relationship's not working. It's her fault. If I had a different woman, it would be better. And you go to a different relationship and it's the same thing with a different person. Speaking to myself again, right? Like when I'm calling you out on this, I can speak to you about this because this was my story. And the problem is that you gotta go up into the top four of these to make the change. You'll keep circling over and over and over again, and nothing's going to change for you until you make the change up in the purpose, identity, the mindset, and your state, your energy, and your emotions. But here's the thing. Could you change your state? Could you try to put yourself in a better mood or a better emotion? Could you try to physically do something? Could you try to change your beliefs and still not get the result? Yes or no? Have you tried it before? Have you tried to like change a belief, but you're like, BS, that's not true? Why? Because the ones that are higher up have more influence and control over the lower ones. So if your identity doesn't match up to your mindset or beliefs or your energy, that's not going to show up as real. That's why people like do affirmations out loud over and over and over again. The affirmations don't match up with the identity. So it's not consistent. It's not congruent. They try to change their state. They try to change their emotions. They pump themselves up. Have you ever seen that guy that's like pumps himself up, but it seems fake, like he's overcompensating? It's because he's trying to pump himself up to overcompensate for the identity. So you got to make the change at the identity level. Now, the problem with this, though, is how do you make the change at the identity level? If I just change my identity, like I am this, I am that, isn't that not going to last long term? Yeah, and that's true. And I'm going to share with you why. But what we really want to do, foundational principle here, is we want to go from the top down. So you have a strong enough purpose, then you become the identity that has to achieve the purpose. Then you align your mindset and beliefs and values to your identity. Then you show up as that person every day in your energy. And then all of this stuff starts to just happen. Does that make sense? But I'm going to share with you why just changing your identity, just like that, I am this new identity, doesn't always work. You got to condition it. And so here's what I'm going to go. I'm going to share with you here in this book here in a moment. The self-image can be changed. So remember I said there were 2 points? I forgot to share with you the second one. The second point is the self-image can be changed. Numerous case studies or case histories have shown that one's never too young or old to change his self-image and thereby start to live a new life. One of the reasons why it seems to be so difficult for a person to change his habits or his personality is because all of his efforts at change are directed at the circumstances or the things in proximity to himself rather than the center. So he's saying all of your personal development efforts are aimed at things around this, but not the root problem. He goes, if you are talking about positive thinking, I've tried that before. It just doesn't work for me. However, a little bit of questioning brings out of those people who have tried positive thinking, um, that they did little more than just change their thinking, but their self, their inner self, who they believed they were, was still the same. And do you remember what he said about, who you believed you were? That's all coming from past reference experiences, past successes, past failures, past beliefs. So check this out. Here's how you want to make the change. Um, I've heard it worded that everybody goes through their life with the equivalent of a jetpack on their back and a bungee cord tied to their legs with an anchor. Now, what we try to do is we try to change the strategies, we try to change the habits, we try to change our beliefs. We're trying to apply thrust by achieving our goals, but we got this anchor tied to our ankles and we're going 2 steps forward and yanking back. What we have to do is we have to chop the anchor at our legs so that way we can move forward without any baggage. And the way that we do that is all of this stuff, your identity, is controlled right here by number 7, your conditioning. Your identity is controlled by your conditioning. So here's how it goes. Your identity is tied to your beliefs. Your beliefs are tied to your stuck emotions. Your stuck emotions are tied to your conditioning, which is largely unconscious and happened between the ages of 0 and 7 or 7 to 14. Okay? So your identity, again, is tied to your mindset. Your mindset and your beliefs are tied to your energy, like your trapped emotions. And your trapped emotions are tied to your environment and your conditioning, which is mostly unconscious from 0 to 7. Does that make sense? So if I were to start from scratch, and it took me years to figure this out, here is exactly what I would do. Here's the 3-step process that I would do to start from scratch to totally transform your life. Okay, here it is. Number 1 is I would get really clear on my purpose. Really clear on my purpose. If you're going to be like a high value man, you got to be on your purpose, but you have a really strong purpose, number 1. But that's not enough. If you have a really strong purpose, but you still have all these identity conflicts, or you have like these internal conflicts, it's not going to work. So number 1, what's your purpose? And then the second question is, who must I become to live that purpose and step into it? Does that make sense? And then put that down on paper. But then what's going to happen is all of your resistance, all of your limiting beliefs, all of your baggage, all your trapped emotions are going to come up. And what people normally do is, oh, it's not working. All my stuff's coming up. That means it's working. Because let's say if you set a GPS, I have this image here. If you set a GPS and you're here, and then there's your destination, well, it's going to calculate and it's going to show you, here's all the roadblocks, here's the detour, here's where they're doing construction. We got to go around. So whenever you set a destination, automatically all the roadblocks are going to come up. So that's why this is so important. Number 1, get super clear on your purpose. Number 2, figure out who do you have to become to live that purpose and step into the identity. And then you're going to have those wobbles, kind of like training wheels. It's not going to fully be congruent yet. Now you can look down the other levels, right? Your beliefs, your values, your mindset, your energy, how you're showing up in your state, your habits, your conditioning. Now you can see where's the resistance coming up and where do I clear it? And that's where the personal development work really happens. Does that make sense? So that is what I would do if I were starting from scratch. Get clear on the purpose, figure out who the identity is that I have to become to live the purpose, and then get rid of all of the stuff holding me back from getting there. So comment below, what is the biggest thing that you got from this so far? What's the biggest thing that you guys got from this so far? Comment your biggest takeaway. Just comment in the chat. Love to see them. And so people ask what I did to change my life. I did that process. I didn't have it fleshed out at the time. I had to reverse engineer it. When people were asking me how I did it, I sat down, like, wait, how did I do what I did? And it was that 7 levels of self-mastery thing. That's when I discovered that. But what I literally did is I changed my self-concept. And when I did that, all of the baggage came up. But when the baggage came up, I knew how to release it. And so I look at it like, picture a hot air balloon. You're in a hot air balloon and you're trying to apply the hot air or the fire to it, and you're trying to lift off. It's not lifting off. So what you got to do is you got to chop the sandbags. And as the sandbags come off, then you start to lift up off the ground. That's what I did. People think it was by striving and trying and pushing really hard. I pushed hard for years. Nothing worked. I kept burning out. The only thing that worked for me, align my purpose, figure out the identity, and then start to chop all the baggage holding me back from being that. And that's when it's, like I said, it's not like you're not going to make any effort. You have to go to the gym if you want to lose weight. You have to go to work or have a business if you want to make money. Like you got to put effort in, but you're no longer banging your head against the wall, having these internal conflicts and going 2 steps forward, 1 step back. This is the fastest way I know to turn your life around. And this is what I absolutely love helping people do. I absolutely 100% recommend this book. I'm going to hold it up. Psycho Cybernetics, the updated and expanded edition. You can probably find it on Amazon. Really, really good. And also, if you want some help with this, because this book is going to have some great exercises. If you're, you know, if you have the endurance for it, go through the book, do the exercises. I'm sure it's going to work really well for you. If you want, though, this is what I help guys out with. I help guys out either in that group format because I shared with you kind of like the sneak peek of what it looks like. I help people out in the group program. We do weekly coaching. We have a video course you can go through whenever you want, and I give you guys feedback and help you out in terms of creating this self-concept for yourself. Another thing I do, if it requires personalization, because a lot of stuff, like a lot of beliefs and values and conditioning, it's more than you can just do in a group setting. Like if it's something you really need help with one-on-one, I'd love to work with you. I do a 3-day process to help you get rid of all the conditioning, and then I help you over time to condition a new identity. So that's really cool too. I work with guys one-on-one. We do a breakthrough. We find the root cause of all the stuff holding you back. We eliminate it fast. And then it's just a matter of like when you plant a tree, you put the wood next to it so it grows straight. We get rid of all the stuff, we plant the seeds, and then I stick with you as you grow to make sure that the change really lasts. So if you want some help with that, reach out. We got the group program, we got the one-on-one, and I really hope you get a lot out of today. Even just today with the book and with the 7 levels concept, you're a lot farther than most people. So comment below what you got from this. If you want some help with this personally, comment mastery, and I'll be able to reach out to you directly. I'll send you a DM, and we'll just chat really quick. And if it's a good fit, great. If not, no big deal. Enjoy the free stuff in this group, and we can just enjoy it as we go. You know, no big deal. And if you want some help, comment mastery and comment your biggest takeaway from this video. So that's it for now. This is Jared with Self Mastery for Men. I will see you guys on next week's live. Take care.